Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. My name is Brian from Kingdom Hearts and Cross Nation, and today I got quite the episode for you guys. I've been wanting to, talk about some of the more advanced and competitive aspects of the game for quite a while now, especially when it comes to like what are the best medals at the moment, what are the best setups, best keyblades, all that good stuff. And I am here today to do my best to convey all of that good information to you guys as best as possible. Alright, so before I get started, I just want to say, I want to give a shout out to my friend Rosie from KHUXtracker.com. This is her Twitter account if you wish to go follow her. She has a wonderful website. I'm actually going to be using her website for today's video in order to help convey some of the aspects of the different medals and setups and stuff to help convey to you guys which ones are actually better and not. And I'll be going back and forth between our two websites to help show you guys the actual data and such. So if you enjoy her website and you wish to be up to date on the type of updates and such that she posts or makes changes to the website, feel free to go ahead and follow her on Twitter. Other than that, let's get into the actual subject of today's video. I am talking about what are the best setups, medals, and keyblades for that are currently in the meta. For this game. So I'm actually going to start from the best to worst. Or not worst exactly. I'm going to be covering the top 5 keyblades and setups for today's video because it would take too long if I cover all of them at the same time. But starting off, we are going to be looking at number 1. The number 1 keyblade at the moment that has some of the best medals, the best setup. So number 1 keyblade at the moment is the Counterpoint. And the reason why the Counterpoint is the best keyblade at the moment is simply because of, for a variety of reasons. It has access to some of the best medals currently available in the game, as well as the fact that the slot arrangements, like the attributes that it has for the keyblade, almost perfectly support those best medals in the game as well. So just looking here at the screen, we can take a look at this, okay? That this right here, I did a few tweaking around, I messed around with stuff trying to figure out which setups were actually the best, and this is what I found. This right here, so on the Counterpoint, on a level 35 Counterpoint with a spirit rank of 5, okay? This is currently the strongest setup currently available in the game. Just a quick note, all of these setups that I will be providing to you guys are not taking into account any skills or traits that your medals might have. This is assuming that there's no traits or skills on those medals, because traits and skills can affect how good a setup and medal is compared to other ones, okay? So this is strictly looking at the medals at face value, assuming they're fully gilded with chips and dales on them and all that good stuff, but no traits or skills. So knowing that, okay, and looking at this, this is the best keyblade and setup available at the game in the moment, okay? And I will go into detail as to why. Okay, so starting off, we have the HD Nominee copying the illustrated Kairi, and this makes sense. It's the one of the most common setups in the game at the moment. I mean, just have a copy medal, copy Kairi EX or Xion EX. But because of the fact that the Counterpoint has almost entirely upright slots, it makes sense we want to use Kairi EX, so that way we can take advantage of the upright buff that Kairi EX provides. And going along with this, we also have the 358/2 days Riku in the 3rd slot as well to go along with those buffs. So just looking at the first 2 slots of the Nominee and the Kairi, from there we get +4 upright buff. The 3rd slot, because 358/2 days provides a +1 upright buff. That's at we currently have 5 upright buff at the moment. And then to top it all off, we have the HD King Mickey EX medal, which provides a +2 upright buff. So from the first 4 medals, we max out all of our stats, okay? Like completely max out all of our stats, all of our buffs, all of our debuffs, everything. They are maxed out. And part of the reason why this is such a good setup and is one of the strongest is because of the fact we are accomplishing a variety of things. So take this into account. Part of the reason why we have the 358 days over 2 whatever Riku in the 3rd slot is because he gets that multiplier buff. His minimum multiplier is a 2.91, but if you have him in slot 3, his multiplier becomes a 4.6. Essentially have a 3.8 multiplier when he's in slot 3, assuming he's max gilted. That's insane, especially for an AoE medal. He also debuffs general defense by 3 tiers, which helps make up for the fact that just copying Kairi EX once doesn't completely max out general defense. That's the only stat that doesn't get completely maxed out, because of the fact that Kairi only debuffs general defense by 3 tiers. So if you copy it, it gets to 6 tiers, and we're still missing that 1 tier left to completely cap it. But because of the fact that this provides a general defense debuff, it finishes the cap, as well as providing an upright buff, and it's getting the multiplier increase. So just by listening to that, you could probably understand why just that right there is a ridiculously good setup. But now we're going to get into the 4th slot, the HT King Mickey. HT King Mickey is one of the strongest medals, magic upright medals currently available in the game. And I will go ahead and go to my website right now to go ahead and show this. So if we go ahead and take a look at the tier 7 medals that are currently available in the game, this is my spreadsheet that I have on my website. And let's take a look at some of the medals. So we're going to go by total max multiplier for right now. We're going to organize it by that. So if we take a look at this, HT King Mickey is in 5th place in terms of multiplier. It has the 5th highest multiplier in terms of just base total max multiplier. Okay, and there's 2 magic upright medals that beat it, which is the Illustrated Halloween Donald that we just got recently, the high score challenge medal, as well as Valor Genie. But he's a single target medal, but he's tied with Hercules B for having the highest multiplier at 19.8, which is absolutely ridiculous. However, part of the reason that HT King Mickey is so good is because of the fact he also ignores attributes for his attacks, which means that every single attack he does ends up being super effective. Think of it as if, like, you know how like power is super effective against speed, speed is super effective against magic, magic is super effective against power. It's essentially that. It's doing the same thing as that, where you will always be super effective against any type of enemy that you're fighting. And being an EX medal that's already has a highly strong multiplier, that's doing a lot of damage. On top of the fact that because of the fact he's in that 4th slot right here, means he's capping out that upright buff. So he's taking full advantage of all the stats that you have, and he's just going, and he's a massive truck. Okay. And just quickly going back to that spreadsheet I got here, if I go look at the alternative total max multiplier, so this is taking into account the 358/2 days Riku and stuff like that. This is what we start seeing. So 358/2 days, when you start taking into account the alternative max multiplier, he's also one of the highest multipliers in the game when he's used specifically for slot 3. Essentially what's happening is you're grabbing some of the best and strongest medals in the game for magic upright, and you're slapping them in their perfect positions, like right here and stuff. You're just slapping them in the perfect positions for them, and they're just doing the most insane damage whatsoever. And that's not even touching the fact we got like the Illustrated Donald and Valor Genie over here, like Jesus. So if we go to tier 7, we see so actually hold up, he's a tier 6 medal, I believe. So if we go to tier 6, okay, and we organize it by total max multiplier, the Illustrated Goofy and Donald medals have some of the highest multipliers in the game, period. Okay, they are random medals, which is something to consider, but it's still very arguably some of the best. Like, they have a total max multiplier of the 17.92, which is absolutely ridiculous. Like, looking over here, just look at the alternative total max multipliers. They come in 2nd place after Valor Genie and Hercules B. Jesus Christ. Like, they beat the 358 days Riku, the HD Final Form Sora, the Kingdom Hearts 2 Leon. They beat those by a landslide. and you're just slapping that on the keyblade in the strongest slot of the keyblade as well. So like this illustrated Donald right here is just absolutely wrecking everybody. Plus we have the Valor Genie, which is currently the strongest magic upright metal in the game. So it's just like this, it's just absolutely bonkers what this setup does. So using the tracker functions, I have it so I show right here what the total damage is. Please keep in mind when looking at this for this entire video that that does not accurately tell you the exact amount of damage that a setup will do. It's just giving you a rough idea of what the setup can do. So the best way to think about this is that's not the exact amount of damage, but it will tell you which metals and setups are better than others. That for sure is guaranteed. So like say for example, even though this doesn't exactly do 37 million damage, for example, right here, it will always do more damage than the second place setup, for example. Like the number will always be higher. So that's like one way you can help use the numbers and like take it into account and think about it. Is that it's a great way to help compare setups and keyblades and all that stuff and metals, but it's not an accurate way to define how much actual damage is going to do in game. So take that into account. But that works perfectly for what I'm trying to do in today's video, which is solely to compare things and tell you what's best and not, which is exactly what I want. So in terms of what's the #1 ranked keyblade at the moment, it's the Counterpoint. Counterpoint is in first place. In terms of what's the best setup for Counterpoint, this right here is the best setup at the moment for the Counterpoint. And if you wanted to, for whatever reason, you can switch out Valor Genie for, I believe, Key Art 13. Yeah, I believe that's correct. So if you happen to not have Valor Genie, you can actually swap out Valor Genie for Key Art 13, and that will still do like a ridiculously good amount of damage. Key Art 13 kind of ends up being the default substitute for Valor Genie, assuming you have the rest of the setup. But this is currently the best setup in the game at the moment. Just stating again without taking traits or skills into account. So now let's get into the second placed keyblade and setup, and that's going to be the Fairy Stars. This is actually the setup that I'm currently using myself in the game, and it's just really ridiculously good. It's actually almost on par with the Counterpoint. Like if I take a look, so this is the setup right here that I have for the Fairy Stars before, as the best setup in the game, second best setup. But just to help illustrate it, just how close it is to the Counterpoint, look here, the damage. This setup is doing about 37,458,890 damage according to the website. But when I go back to look at the Counterpoint, the Counterpoint's doing 37,625,139. As you can see, looking between the two of these, they're off just by like 100 or 2 points. I mean 100,000 or 2 points. Okay, that's fairly close. So if you don't have, like, say for example, these guys right here, because of the fact that the Donald medal is a high score challenge medal. I can't really spell this that well. It's a high score challenge medal, and this is an EX medal. Yeah, it's an EX medal. Then in that case, this is the Fairy Stars setup is the more likely setup that you're probably more able to magically get. And if needed, if you don't have Valor Genie for whatsoever reason, because of the fact he is a high score challenge medal, you can probably substitute him for Hercules B instead, because you can actually pull for Hercules B, but you can't pull for Valor Genie. So getting into the Fairy Star setup, this is the setup that I'm using myself. I love it so much. It's just absolutely ridiculously powerful. And let me go into explaining why. So the first three metals that we're using is literally almost exactly the same as the Counterpoint setup for the first three metals being used. So we're just copying Kyrie EX because of the fact we're going to be using entirely upright metals. And if you're looking at this and you don't understand why the Shion's there, it's because of the fact that when HD Shion copies the HDFF Sora, it turns into an upright metal, so it actually gains any upright buffs that you have as well. So that's why she's there. Because of the fact that I want to take advantage of all of my buffs, if I use like a power reverse metal in that slot as well, I will actually decrease the amount of damage I would be using. And I can actually go ahead and show that as well. So let's look at this real quick. So the first 3 metals are the exact same, and we already know that obviously Kyrie X is the best buff and debuff metal in the game, and we already explained about the Riku metal. I kind of just explained about the Shion metal. Now about the HD Final Form Sora metal. This kind of follows the same logic as the 358 Days Riku metal, and if we go to this tier 7 list right here, okay, it's tied for the total max multiplier, alternative total max multiplier right here. With the 358 Days Riku and the Kingdom Hearts 2 Leon, and is amongst some of the best multipliers in the game at the moment if you specifically use it in its specific slot, which for the Final Form Sora is slot 5. And the Fairy Stars perfectly supports both the Riku and the Sora. So it's both buffing and doing ridiculous amount of damage at the exact same time. It's almost like they made these medals specifically for Fairy Stars. I don't know if they actually did. It kind of feels like they did, but it ends up being that Fairy Stars is also the top contester with the Counterpoint in terms of best setups and keyblades and medals and stuff like that. And obviously we can tell from right here, I got the Valor Genie here just because I've started really liking having high strong multiplier single target medals in my last slot, just because it helps make sure and guarantee that I just finish off people. Just make sure they just are absolutely defeated and destroyed. But in case you're just to help explain this real quick, even though I'm not capping the upright buffs by slot 4 like I was for Counterpoint, I am capping them at the slot 5 part. And the way that medals work is they apply all of the debuffs and buffs before they actually deal damage. So what ends up happening is Sora actually provides the upright buff and the general defense down debuff first, and then he does damage. So what ends up happening is he actually caps all of your stats out, and then he deals damage, making sure he does max damage. And that's partially why this setup is so good and it works. So what ends up happening is right here we have +4 upright buff, +5 upright buff, +6 upright buff because it's copying the Sora, and then we have the cap it out at the +7 upright buff, and then it's just we're just going nuts. Okay, so that right there is the second place setup, assuming you have this exact setup in the game at the moment. This is the second place setup, and it's pretty much almost tied with the Counterpoint setup, and it's honestly a lot more manageable and easier to get than the Counterpoint setup, simply because we can't get the Donald anymore, we can't get Valor Genie anymore, and we have to wait for Mickey to pop up again if we wanted to do Mickey. And again, if you don't have Valor Genie, you could always replace it with Hercules B. It's essentially the same thing, just a different attribute. All right, so now going on to the third place Keyblade and setup, that will be the Stroke of Midnight. Now this one is a little bit extra. It requires having 2 HD Shions for this one to work, but it's still really good. And here's the thing, okay? So it's fairly similar to like the previous 2 Keyblades. And as you can tell right here by the damage, it's still fairly close to what like the other 2 were doing. They were doing like 37 million and a half damage, while this one is just barely almost at this 37 million mark. And this is help convey. Remember, this is just to help convey which setups are better than each other. This is not an accurate representation of how much damage is actually dealing. But for this setup, we're copying the Kyrie X, makes sense. But this time we're actually doing something slightly different in terms of the third slot, which was where we're using the HD Anti-Form Sora to copy the HD King Mickey. And this is actually doing a couple things, which is actually pretty potent. It's the fact that, okay, so by the first 2 slots, we're getting +4 upright butt. King Mickey provides a +2 upright butt as well. So by slot 3, we have it at 6, and slot 4, we cap it already. But the fact that King Mickey also provides a -2 general defense down debuff as well, that means we're also capping out the general defense down slot by the 3rd slot as well. And that's something you want to kind of aim for whenever using the Kairi and Shion EX medals. Is you don't have to copy it twice. Like, you don't need it in the middle like this. Okay, so let me erase this. So a lot of people will do is they will have the Kairi EX or Shion EX medal in the middle, in the 2nd slot. They'll have a copy medal right there, and then they'll have a copy medal right here, and they're both copying the Kairi or Shion EX, okay? But here's the thing. If you have a medal in the 3rd slot who is applying that general defense down debuff, you don't need to copy Kairi or Shion EX. You just need that general defense down debuff to help cap that buff. Even better, if you have a medal that can provide the same type of upright or reverse buff that the Kairi or Shion EX medal that you're using is providing, that is your best bet scenario. And that's the reason why I'm using HD Anti-Form Sora here to copy the King Mickey EX, because it's providing upright buff which goes with the Kairi EX medal. So on top of providing the buffs and debuffs that complete like the whole setup, it's also taken advantage of the fact that King Mickey is super effective against every single type of enemy. It ignores attributes, so that means we get to actually do max damage twice for both slot 3 and slot 4, which is really good, really potent. And this, when it comes to slot 5, unfortunately for this to work, you need to have another HD Shion for this to work, because of the fact that you want to... The only way to help maximize damage for this setup is to be using purely upright medals as much as possible. And the only way to do that with reverse slots is if you're using a reversed copy medal to copy an upright medal. So that way when it copies the medal, it turns into an upright medal and can take advantage of those upright buffs. So that's unfortunately why we need that. So that way, and you can just put whatever your strongest upright medal is. I'm just doing Valor Genie is just kind of the staple for me. But like I said before, you can replace it with like Hercules B or something if you wanted to as well. But that's it for that. Now for 3rd place, we have the Divine Rose, and this one takes a little bit of shuffling around. Now it's unfortunate, but I wasn't able to fully utilize the speed reverse slots that they had, so I had to kind of like do alternative things and make them at least speed medals instead, because there's no good speed reverse medals in the game at the moment that help support upright strategies. There just isn't, and it's kind of unfortunate. We have it for power and magic, but we don't have it for speed. And actually, you'll actually notice this, but speed type strategies are currently the worst strategies in the game. Because I don't know why, but speed just doesn't have the necessary support that magic and power does. Magic setups have... Magic is the best utility type of attribute in the game. You will see the most utility medals in magic attribute type of medals compared to any other attribute. And power has some of the strongest medals in the game as well. But when it comes to speed is almost like it's trying to do a little bit of both. It's trying to be strong, but it's also trying to have utility. But unfortunately, there's not enough of that for both aspects in the speed slots. So it's just like, yeah, and it's even worse for the reverse medals too. Like, speed reverse is by far the weakest attribute in the game at the moment. Like you can tell right here, we're already on the 4th strongest Keyblade setup, and I know I haven't talked about Divine Rose too much yet, but so far we've mainly been seeing magic and like mostly magic type strategies. Okay. Now you might argue that HD Final Form Sora is like, oh, but that's a speed medal, blah, blah, blah. That's one of those few good medals, speed medals in the game at the moment. Unfortunately, like literally there's only a small handful, if even that, of actually good speed medals in the game at the moment. In the meta, I should say, that are currently in the meta. And HD Final Form Sora is just luckily one of those few. And luckily we can actually utilize it quite a bit too. But onto the Divine Rose anyways. So just like usual, we're doing the Riku, we're doing the copy thing. We have Mickey here again. And we're using HD Anti-Form Sora to copy the Valor Genie. It's nothing different. We kind of been seeing the same things with the other ones already. And you can start seeing a kind of trend going on over here, which was we're basically essentially doing almost the same exact thing with all of these setups. We're just doing them slightly differently, and you're starting to see a lot of these similar medals. I made sure that when I was going through this, I would look at my website, look at the data and everything, look at my spreadsheets, and I helped to figure out which of these medals do the highest damage, are the best for the buffs and debuffs and stuff like that. And I actually tried diffing out different setups too, just to confirm that what I was doing correct, and they were. So at the moment, this is the most manageable setup and best setup for the Divine Rose, to get the max damage and just to get the best results. Same thing with the Stroke of Midnight. It's unfortunate for the Stroke of Midnight, you need that extra HD Shion, but that's the only way to make it work, to make it do the best. And I'm trying to make these as much realistic and manageable as well. I'm not gonna do something as ridiculous as having like 5 EX medals. Like you need to be like the top like 0.001% to even have that many EX medals and such. Yeah. But for 5th place, and this is the last one I'll be talking about, is the Fenrir. The Fenrir is the 5th place medal, and just like the Stroke of Midnight, you need 2 HD Shions for this to work, for it to get the same type of results that I'm mentioning. But you're essentially doing the same exact thing here. Unfortunately, because it's a purely power-based Keyblade, we can't use the Riku medal anymore, so we're kind of forced to utilize the copy medal for the Kairi over here to help max out as much as possible those upright buffs. But then right here, I'm using the HD Shion to copy the Goofy medal over here, because in terms of power upright, the illustrated Goofy medal is the 2nd strongest medal in the game. So we take a look at this again real quick. So in terms of medal, so illustrated Goofy and illustrated Donald, they have a total max multiplier of 17.92. And if we go back to the tier 7 list, the highest multiplier in the games at the moment are with Valor Genie and Hercules B at 19.8. And even with the alternative total max multipliers, they completely outstrip the HDFF Sora, the 358 Days Riku, and the Kingdom Hearts 2 Leon, even with their alternative max multipliers. They're significantly higher. Like, they only have a 13.8 multiplier, whereas those illustrated Donald and Goofy medals, they have a max multiplier of 17.92. So if you have those, abuse them as much as possible. And that is why I am copying the Goofy medal right here. Because it's just going to do a ridiculous amount of damage. And then, of course, we have the Hercules B to go along with the whole power attribute type thing, as the pet slot. And that's currently the strongest power upright medal in the game, so it makes sense. But this setup right here does a total of about 32.5 million compared to the other setups. Again, it's not an accurate amount of damage that will actually be done in game. It's just an estimate to help you give you an idea of which setups are better than others. Now, there's something I want to quickly mention real quick before I go off a little bit, and that's the fact that I hope you probably have noticed that there were no reverse setups at all in these in these meta. And that's because of the fact that, for a variety of reasons. One, there's not enough moon gems to get their Keyblade levels to level 35. So even if they have supporting medals to make them top, because of the fact that our Keyblades at the moment are currently unavailable to reach that level 35 level. They're not going to have the multipliers necessary to compete with these other with the other Keyblades that are able and already capable of being level 35 or higher. So that's a reason, but there's also another major reason why, which is that there are currently more support for upright based strategies than there is for reverse based strategies at the moment. Okay, there are more medals that provide upright buffs, for example, than there are medals for reverse buffs. Like off the top of my head, I think there's only 2 or 3 medals currently in the game that actually provide reverse buffs, and I think that's Shion EX, HDP, and Dual Wield Roxas EX. Those are currently the only 3 EX medals that provide reverse buffs in the game, and it's kind of hard to utilize them sometimes too, especially since they're different attributes. So it's like it's almost impossible to try and get them remotely close. We're about to get a new medal sometime soon, which is the Master Xehanort EX medal, that is going to be aside from Shion EX, it's going to be another magic reverse medal that provides a reverse buff. But other than that, that's it for today, guys. I've been wanting to talk about competitive and the meta and stuff for quite a long time now. But other than that, that's it for today, guys. If you enjoyed the video, please leave a like and subscribe. If you think you found a better setup, please go ahead, go to khuxtracker.com. Put together a setup for me and send me a picture of it. Keep in mind that your setup has to have no traits and no skills attached for it to be legitimate, in order to actually be able to legitimately compare it to the setups I provided in this video. But yeah, if you enjoyed this, if you enjoyed the work I do, please leave a like and subscribe. Go ahead and check out my Patreon. Help me out there. It helps show that you support it. Even just $1 a month means a lot and can help out significantly. But other than that, that's it for today, guys. My name is Brian from Kingdom Hearts Cross Nation, and I will see you guys in the next video. Peace.